What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today we're going to be going over Battlefield 1 and what that game did really well, and trying to figure out some of the elements of that game that Battlefield 2042 can learn from in order to improve it and get it to the place that it needs to be. Now, just last week I did already cover Battlefield 4 in this pretty much exact same type of video, and then I will be covering Battlefield 5 next as well, so be sure to check out the Battlefield 4 video, and if you guys do enjoy this type of content, definitely let me know down in the comments, because I can also go back and cover Bad Company 2 and Battlefield 3 as well. So yeah, if you do enjoy this type of stuff, definitely let me know down in the comments. If you're new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. But with that being said, let's get stuck right into it. So Battlefield 1 is obviously one of the most loved Battlefield games in the entire franchise. It did have plenty of issues, both with just a lack of features in the game as well as a lack of content. The live service was definitely not the best, but I think most people look back on that game and they really love it. And I think there's a lot of stuff that Battlefield 2042 could learn from that game in order to essentially get 2042 to where it needs to be. Now, the first thing on my list here is a pretty obvious one, and I know you guys are going to probably guess what I'm going to get at straight away. The atmosphere in Battlefield 1 was absolutely unmatched, and I really do think that if they could even get the atmosphere in 2042 to be literally like half as good as Battlefield 1, then that would be absolutely game changing, because to be honest, that is probably one of the biggest issues in 2042 at the moment. Battlefield 1 just had this sense of like immersion, and it just really did feel like you were in the battle when you were playing that game. The sound design and the graphics and just the look and the feel of each map, it genuinely did feel like one of the most immersive experiences that I've ever had playing any video game, let alone just a shooter. And although there's a lot of more like technical type of issues with Battlefield 2042, there's a lot of missing features, there's a lot of bugs and a lot of small like failures of the game, but to me, like I said, one of the biggest issues with the game, and it's not just me, it's a lot of people in the community, the overall tone and the feeling of the game is just very lackluster. And like I said, I think if they could try and learn a bit from Battlefield 1, that would make an absolutely drastic difference to Battlefield 2042. Now, obviously Battlefield 1 probably has a slight advantage because it is based off a real war, so it's always going to feel a bit more like realistic. They obviously are using weapons that are real. A lot of the weapons in 2042 are either based on real weapons or they're essentially like prototype weapons. Technically speaking, they're not actually real weapons, whereas the weapons that we play with in Battlefield 1, they are real. The developers have actually been able to go and shoot these at shooting ranges and record how they sound, see how they act, and especially see how they look. Put that into the game so that it just feels very authentic, and it does feel like World War One. Obviously, none of us know what World War One felt or looked like, but I think Battlefield 1 does a really good job at feeling like what we all probably think World War One would look and feel like. Obviously, it's going to be a pretty hard thing for Battlefield 2042 to change. I think the setting is definitely in a spot where they can try and change that, because I do think the overall lore for the game is actually really cool. I think the fact that we're in a almost like a nearing on apocalyptic setting where the world's just like on the brink of war and everyone, like the whole planet is just kind of completely gone to shit. I do think that itself is really cool. Now, unfortunately, it doesn't really reflect that way in game. Obviously, there's the cringy voice lines. Everyone seems super happy when there's meant to be like essentially World War III going on, so they definitely haven't executed that well, but I think the game is set up to do really well in that way, and hopefully they can try and change that, because like I said, I do think if they look back at the games like Battlefield 4, and to be honest, even Battlefield 5 a little bit, even though the tone for that game was a little bit of a mess as well, then I think if they can try and implement that stuff into Battlefield 2042, it would make an absolutely enormous change. Now, the next thing that I wanted to mention was actually to do with the level design, and I did mention level design in the Battlefield 4 video, but in the context of this video, I'm actually essentially talking about the complete opposite side of level design. In the Battlefield 4 video, I mentioned that the maps were just really well made in terms of like the balance between the infantry and the vehicles, but the thing that I wanted to point out about Battlefield 1 and its level design is that they've really nailed the map design when it comes to like showing how to design levels without having an abundance of buildings and cover. At the end of the day, a lot of the maps in Battlefield 1 were probably just as open as the maps in Battlefield 2042, but they really just nailed it so that it played a lot better than it does in Battlefield 2042. To be fair, a lot of that is probably just to do with the scale. Obviously, the maps were not nearly as big, but there were a lot of maps where there was really not that much cover, but they did have enough cover in those open areas that had stuff like trenches, for example, even just little like trees out in the paddocks and stuff like that. And I just think that they really nailed that open map design without having buildings and sandbags everywhere, for example, but it didn't feel like it was really open. It didn't feel like you had to run 200, 300 meters without any cover. When you look at a lot of the maps in Battlefield 1, I'm thinking of maps like St. Quentin Scar, for example. That map is very open. Obviously, the center of it is very built up. It's like the little village area, and then kind of like the outskirts of the map, it had the whole like burned section, like the scarred section of the map with a lot of buildings and ruins and the bomb shells and stuff like that. But a large chunk of that map was just literally a grass paddock. Like, there was really not that much to it, but it never felt even remotely as open as the Battlefield 2042 maps, and I think that that's the type of thing they need to try and implement into Battlefield 2042, because I do think you can have relatively open maps without having them be boring and unplayable, and it's definitely not going to be an easy task for them to fix that, but we already know they're trying to fix a lot of the problems with the 2042 maps in the game currently, and so hopefully they do look back at the maps like St. Quentin Scar and Monte Grappa, for example. Those maps were very, very open, and as an example with Monte Grappa, like, that map was literally just a hill with grass and rocks. There was pretty much no buildings. There was obviously the bunkers and stuff, but above ground there was essentially no buildings, yet that map had plenty of cover. It never really felt, other than if you were getting like strafe front or something like that, for example, or if the airship came in, obviously you were in a bit of trouble then, but for the most part it never really felt like that map was too open, because they really did design it well to where it was extremely open, but there was always a piece of cover to hide behind. And so that right there is just the prime example of how they can try and fix 2042 without having to just put a bunch of buildings everywhere. You can definitely have open maps without having them pretty much completely suck like the ones in 2042 do. Now, the last thing on the list for this video is actually to do with the live service, and I think what 2042 can learn from Battlefield 1 is how not to do a live service. Now, unfortunately, they've kind of started off in the same vein. In Battlefield 1, it took, I think, roughly 6 months for the first DLC pack. Battlefield 1 launched so well, and then the live service of that game just really did not go down well. And like I said, although 2042 has kind of started that same way, I think they're not too far into where they can try and look back and learn from that and go, okay, it's taken us 8 months to get Season 1 out, but once Season 1 starts, let's not drag out this live service and drip feed content. Let's look at games like Battlefield 4 and how that game did its live service and try to essentially not repeat the same issues that Battlefield 1 had. So, like I said, that one's kind of ironic because Battlefield 1 had a 6-month wait before content, and we're nearly already at 6 months without any content for Battlefield 2042. So I know it probably seems like it's a little bit too late for that, but I think they can still change that. Whether they do, I'm not 100% confident, but at the end of the day, I hope they just look back at Battlefield 1 and think about what that game was when it launched. It was so damn good, and unfortunately the live service, or the lack of a live service, it kind of eventually killed that game. So hopefully they take a look at that and try their best to not go down the same path. But anyway, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Like I said in the Battlefield 4 video, there's so many things that I could go through for Battlefield 1. For me, that is one of my favorite shooters of all time, so I could go on for literally hours about this, but I've tried to put it down to just a couple of things here. But if there's any other stuff that you guys think is worth mentioning, then definitely leave a comment down below, as I'm keen to hear what you guys have to say. If you enjoyed the video, then be sure to leave a like down below, and if you guys are new to the channel, then definitely hit that subscribe button and turn on those notifications. If you want to support the content that I make here on YouTube, then do consider becoming a channel member. But with that being said, thank you all very much for watching. You guys have a great day, and I'll see you all out there on the battlefield.